300 Hells Angels came to protect child being abused by his teacher. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jefferson Elementary as 8-year-old Tommy Martinez walked reluctantly toward the school entrance. His small shoulders were hunched, and the backpack seemed to weigh more than usual. What none of the other children knew was that Tommy carried more than just books. He carried a secret that was slowly destroying his childhood. Mrs. Henderson had been Tommy's third-grade teacher for 6 months, and what started as extra help after school had turned into something much darker. The woman everyone praised as dedicated and caring had been systematically abusing the quiet boy whose single mother worked double shifts at the diner just to make ends meet. Tommy's mother, Maria, worked at Chuck's Roadhouse, a popular stop for truckers and bikers traveling Route 66. She had noticed changes in her son. The nightmares, the reluctance to go to school, the way he flinched when adults got too close. But as a struggling single parent, she felt powerless against the education system and worried that speaking up might make things worse. Everything changed on a Thursday evening when Maria was serving coffee to a group of Hells Angels who regularly stopped at Chuck's. The chapter president, a grizzled man named Bear, noticed Maria's distress. "You look troubled." "Maria," Bear said, his weathered face showing genuine concern. Despite their intimidating appearance, the bikers had always been respectful customers who tipped well and never caused trouble. Through tears, Maria found herself telling Bear about Tommy's situation. She explained how her son had finally opened up to her the night before, describing months of abuse at the hands of his teacher. She had called the school, the district, even the police, but everything moved slowly and Tommy was still required to attend Mrs. Henderson's class daily. Bear's expression darkened as he listened. Around the table, the other bikers, men with names like Steel, Thunder, and Phoenix, grew quiet. These weren't just weekend riders. They were brothers who had seen the worst of life and had their own children and grandchildren. "Nobody hurts kids on our watch," Bear said quietly. Nobody. By Friday morning, word had spread through the Brotherhood's network. Chapters from across 3 states began converging on the small town. They came from Los Angeles, Phoenix, Denver, and beyond. By 7 a.m., nearly 300 Hells Angels had assembled in the parking lot of Chuck's Roadhouse. The sight was unprecedented. Hundreds of motorcycles lined the street, their chrome gleaming in the morning sun. The bikers themselves presented an imposing wall of leather vests, tattoos, and unwavering determination. They weren't there to cause trouble. They were there to end it. Bear approached the school principal, Mr. Davies, who stood pale-faced at his office window, watching the massive gathering. "We're here for Tommy Martinez," Bear announced calmly to the administrator. "That boy doesn't spend another minute alone with Mrs. Henderson. Not today, not ever." The principal, overwhelmed by the situation, immediately called the superintendent and district officials. Within an hour, Mrs. Henderson had been suspended pending investigation, and Tommy was safely removed from her classroom, but the bikers weren't finished. They had done their research overnight, discovering that 2 other children had previously made complaints about Mrs. Henderson that had been dismissed or covered up. The evidence they had gathered through their own networks painted a clear picture of systematic abuse and institutional negligence. As news crews arrived and the story began to spread, the 300 bikers remained peaceful but vigilant. They formed a protective perimeter around the school, ensuring that Tommy and the other affected children felt safe. Many of these tough men found themselves fighting back tears as they thought of their own kids and grandchildren. Local police chief Rodriguez, initially concerned about potential violence, found himself working alongside the bikers. "I've never seen anything like it," he later told reporters. "These men traveled hundreds of miles just to protect a child they'd never met. They showed more dedication to justice than our own system had." The story exploded across social media and national news. The image of 300 leather-clad bikers standing guard for an abused child captured hearts worldwide. Donations poured in for Tommy's family, and legal experts offered pro bono services to ensure Mrs. Henderson faced full prosecution. Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who volunteered to help Tommy, observed the profound impact of the biker's actions. Tommy went from being a terrified, isolated child to feeling like he had an army of protectors. The transformation in his confidence was remarkable. The investigation revealed the full extent of Mrs. Henderson's crimes. She was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in prison, and the school district faced federal intervention for their handling of previous complaints. The case led to new mandatory reporting protocols and stricter background checks for educators nationwide. 3 months later, Tommy stood before the assembled crowd at the bikers' annual charity ride, his mother by his side. He had written a letter thanking his 300 uncles for saving him. "Before you came, I felt small and scared," Tommy read, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Now I know that good people will always protect kids like me. You showed me that being different doesn't make you bad. It just means you care enough to do what's right." Bear knelt down to Tommy's level and handed him an honorary Hell's Angels patch. Not for membership, but for courage. "You're the bravest kid I know, little brother. You spoke up when it mattered most." The impact rippled far beyond one small town. The Hells Angels established a national program partnering with child advocacy groups, using their network to identify and respond to abuse cases. Other motorcycle clubs followed suit, creating an unlikely but effective alliance of protectors. Maria Martinez, once powerless and alone, became a spokesperson for parental rights and child protection. The diner where she worked became an unofficial headquarters for the movement, with bikers from around the country stopping by to check on Tommy and support the family. Tommy thrived in his new classroom environment. His grades improved dramatically, and he began participating in school activities he had avoided before. The nightmares stopped, replaced by dreams of riding motorcycles with his protectors when he grew up. The case also sparked important conversations about how society perceives people based on appearance. These men, often prejudged and dismissed, had demonstrated values that institutions had failed to uphold. They showed that protection of the innocent isn't about uniforms or titles. It's about character and courage. 1 year later, at Tommy's 9th birthday party, 50 bikers showed up with gifts and cake. The sight of tough men singing "Happy Birthday" to a small boy became another viral moment, cementing the Brotherhood's reputation as unlikely heroes. Mrs. Henderson's conviction was just the beginning. The district attorney, inspired by the case, launched a task force specifically targeting institutional abuse. Several other educators and administrators were subsequently charged, and dozens of children received the help they needed. The story of 300 Hells Angels protecting one abused child became more than just news. It became a symbol of hope. It proved that justice doesn't always come from expected places, and that sometimes the most intimidating exteriors hide the biggest hearts. Tommy's story continues to inspire child protection advocates worldwide, reminding everyone that no child should face abuse alone, and that heroes come in all forms. This incredible story of courage and protection continues to inspire people worldwide. For more amazing true stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and updates on Tommy's continued journey, make sure to follow our channel. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because every child deserves heroes, and every hero's story deserves to be told. Together, we can create a world where no child suffers in silence.